And welcome back to another episode of Underdog Podcast. A quick little self promo. Uh, Go ahead and follow me on my YouTube channel, Damian Jackson. Follow me on Twitter, Damian_Jackson2. If you check out my YouTube channel, I got links in my descriptions of all my videos that tells you other links to my podcast. Other links to my podcast, yeah. Links to my podcast on other social media sites, as far as links to my website, um, Spotify, Apple, wherever the case may be. Just remember, I meant to put this on Amazon. So that's probably something I'll be doing either today or tomorrow or whenever I remember and feel like doing it. So today's episode, I kind of wanted to talk about the movie Tenet, and not just the movie itself, but I'll kind of go through it, give a little, not necessarily a soft review, but kind of an overview of the plot and stuff. But this is really kind of a rant on just the whole idea behind some movies being complicated, so it's hard to understand. But I feel like that's just bullshit. A lot of these movies are just poorly written, and just because I walk away from a movie feeling confused does not make it complicated. It just means the shit was not explained well. So I guess this is your disclaimer, so to speak, as far as any spoilers in the movie. So my friend told me to watch the movie Tenet, and I've been thinking about it anyways because it looks, like a sci-fi action movie right up my alley. But I didn't know if I wanted to pay for it or watch it, or I didn't know what I was gonna do about it. Maybe if it came on a streaming platform, I would have watched it, or where the case may be. But my friend, she let me hold her Amazon Prime password, so she's like, "I already rented it. Just go ahead and watch it." So I watched it. The movie starts out so even before that, when I seen the commercials and the trailers for the movie, I assumed that the whole Tenet thing was like a device. And with the device, you were able to reverse time. So that's false. I was wrong on that shit. The movie is based on the main star, which is John David Washington. Damn, he doesn't sound like his father, right? And then his name is protagonist. Flat out, that's his fucking name. He's a protagonist. All right, cool. We get the story mode. We get what's going on, whatever. Tenet actually is the name of the company and not of a device or anything, but just kind of name of the organization of these people that basically go back in time, but in reverse, and try to stop the people from the future who ultimately want to end humanity in the past in order to save themselves in the future, and completely ignoring the possibility of the grandfather paradox, which is what will happen if you go back in time and you kill your grandfather? Would you still be born, or will you still exist in the future, in your present time, or wherever the case may be? Confusing, but it's not really confusing because no one fucking knows. No one knows. And if people can time travel, I don't think they want to test that theory out anyway. So there goes that whole part of the movie. But within the first 15 within the first 15 minutes of the movie, for me, so I didn't watch the movie straight through. I had to pause it because there was times in the movie I'm like, wait, what the fuck? This doesn't make sense. And I rewind it because I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So in the first 15 minutes of the movie, I'm like, okay, this is bullshit. This doesn't make sense. And I got aggravated because it was right when the protagonist character, he found out he didn't actually die from taking the pill. He thought he was going to commit suicide. Come to find out, he just took the pill and stuff, whatever. And then next thing you know, he wakes up. They explain to him about Tenet and being inverse in time and trying to stop something to save the whole world, all of humanity in their timeline. even though their timeline, the past, present, and future is all the same timeline, supposedly all in the same reality. It gets worse. It gets worse. So as John David Washington character, the protagonist, he was trying to understand how this whole inverted time thing happens and stuff. So like it shows a part of him shooting the bullet, well, in reverse. So he didn't shoot the bullet. He aimed the gun at this wall, and you could tell that some of the ammunition are the blast radius of the ammunition that was fired on the wall. You could tell that it was from some type of weapon that he's seen before. So whether he's seen in the past and he also saw in the future, who fucking knows? So the the scientist that's with him tries to explain the whole how there's a type of radiation in certain material and stuff that causes it to be inverted. And so it only looks like it's going backwards in time for us, but it's not actually going backwards in time. It's moving in the correct manner, in which from the energy or the radiation or whatever from the timeline is from. Right? And it's like, oh, that sounds confusing, but no, they don't really explain how it all really should work, because it's just saying it vaguely. And I point that out because that's literally what the scientist said. As she's trying to explain to the protagonist, she's like, trying to explain it. Oh, yeah, this and that, the radiation, blah, blah, and the energy. But she said, don't try to understand it. Just feel it out. Don't try to understand it. No, bro. The whole point of this fucking movie is for us to try to understand what is going on in order to understand the rest of the movie. Like, some of the other scenes in the movie could have been cut out so you could explain more of the movie. So during that time frame, I went ahead and paused the fucking movie. I paused the fucking movie because I was like, this don't make sense. I geek out on reading like things about theoretical physics, quantum world, quantum mechanics, stuff like that. And I watch different TV shows and movies and things of that nature that goes on the line of time travel or cause and effect, destiny, fate. I did an episode of my podcast about the show Devs on Hulu, which goes into the whole time travel type of scenario or knowing your future and going back and past. But it was talking about using a quantum supercomputer and basically bringing down the fabric of reality and understanding in that sense. And so I thought, as she was talking, she started talking about particles and energy and radiation. Even throughout the rest of the movie, I was waiting for someone to say quantum world, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, something in that nature. No, not once was it said. And the only reason I also point that out is because earlier this year, I remember reading an article talking about they did an experiment in Antarctica where they shot up particles into the ionosphere and they exploded them. Oh, they shot up a nuclear weapon to the ionosphere. I can't remember. I tried to find an article and I couldn't find it. I have to try harder or something like that. But I'm pretty sure they put a nuclear bomb into the ionosphere and blew it up. And trust me, or rather, believe me, or look up for yourself. Exactly what I should say. Look up for yourself. Scientists, governments around the world ain't above blowing off a nuclear bomb in the middle of nowhere. Whether it's in the middle of Arizona, in Nevada, out in America, or it's in the Pacific Ocean. It doesn't matter. They'll set off a nuclear weapon just to see what the fuck happens. Hell, they'll smash together subatomic particles like your Large Hadron Collider over in Switzerland. They'll do that shit too. Just see what happens. Who cares if we create a mini black hole? It doesn't matter. Oh man, that was an Amazon package. This is the first time they ever rang the doorbell in a long time. That freaked me out, man. But it doesn't matter what they do. So in Antarctica, when they set off this bomb or they release particles into the ionosphere, they realize, or they theorize that they notice, or they observe, is a better word. They observe particles moving inverted or reverse in time. So it's kind of theorizing that there's a parallel universe running in reverse of us. So this is where I thought this movie was going, because that's essentially what's happening. Except for you can find some articles too that kind of dispute that, like saying, "Oh, there was no parallel universe discovered in Antarctica." Yeah, okay, whatever. You're not finna have a group of scientists think this and another group of detractors saying, "Oh no, they didn't find a parallel universe." Like, you're gonna fucking tell us? Like, you really gonna tell us? Because when you do tell us, then all of a sudden it just no longer matters, and don't ignore what you read. They were wrong. No. So this is why I thought this movie was going. And that's all my fault for making that assumption, because that made too much sense. Right? That was my fault for making that assumption of something making too much sense. Because if you're going to make a movie like this, then you need to be accurately as possible when it comes to the theoretical physics involved in the movie. This movie would make more sense if you involve quantum entanglement, if you involve quantum mechanics, if you were talking about everything happening in a subatomic world, as far as the movement of particles and stuff like that. It makes a little bit more sense to me, because these are the things that are being observed and studied in our physical reality in science currently, and for a while. A couple decades, if not longer. They're probably even lying about that. But this movie just went all over the place. So the protagonist meets this person, Neil, and it kind of goes on to a heist type of situation, because the protagonist also meets a woman. I think her name is Catherine. They call her Cat, something like that. And she's stuck in a relationship with this dude. I think his name was Soto. I forget what his name was. And this is essentially your villain. And he wants to destroy the world because he basically can't have the world because he's dying of pancreatic cancer, which ironically, are by fate, he ended up getting pancreatic cancer by working near a plutonium dig site in Spec 12, one of the foreign nations or territories of the Soviet Union, of the USSR. And so he dug up some plutonium, or they found plutonium in the case. No, it wasn't plutonium. They were digging into plutonium, and him and another person had found a case, a time capsule, essentially what it was, and they opened it up, and it was gold bars in it, and it had a note saying, do this and that. So he killed the dude that was with him and took the gold bars and went on to become this wealthy individual and have all his power and stuff, knowing that he was a tool of the people in the future. Right? Yeah, it's like, it's not confusing. It just like, come on. Like, I get the whole cause and effect scenario. I get the whole future affecting the past and affecting things in the present. I get all that. But the way in which you orchestrate it and how you lay it out in a movie, just because something seems or something appears to be intrinsic and complex, doesn't mean it has to be confusing. If it's complex, that means you should probably take a little bit more time to explain it. You shouldn't walk away from a movie feeling completely fucking confused by it. And in my personal opinion, it has nothing to do with intelligence or understanding of anything. Obviously, if you're an adult, you being a kid doesn't necessarily mean you can understand all the concepts, but you should still, everybody should walk away with a general understanding of what the fuck happened. You shouldn't walk away feeling what the fuck happened. You shouldn't walk away feeling confused. You shouldn't leave that movie theater, or you shouldn't end that movie at your home, your place of residence, and feel like, damn, what the fuck did I just watch? Because that's what I felt like. What the fuck did I just watch? Why did I just sit here and waste my time trying to understand this movie that has plot holes? Regardless of how it is explained, there are still plot holes in the movie that just doesn't fucking make sense. Before I continue, there was for 4 months. Let me do that. I watched a video on YouTube. I watched several videos on YouTube, but this one seemed to break it down the best, as far as involving time explaining the time inversion, entropy, which is like which I believe is like the transference of energy, in a sense. I believe so. I don't know. And then the channel is called T Break Film Reviews, and it's just Tenet explained, and explaining time inversion and entropy, things like that. So entropy, I had to look up real quick from the New Oxford American Dictionary. It's a thermodynamic quantity representing the unavailability of a system's thermal energy for conversion. A lack of order or predictability, gradual decline and disorder. So I guess in a sense, it's saying things that are inverted are dealing with entropy, this distribution of energy through the materials and assuming the human beings as well. So that's where it kind of gets not confusing. That's where it kind of gets like, wait a minute, you're not making sense anymore. You're just throwing shit together. So as the movie goes on, he meets this guy Neil, and Neil essentially is like a CIA asset where he's helping him out. But you also get a sense that Neil knows a lot more of what's going on than what he's telling anybody. And Neil kind of knows a lot about the protagonist. So you also kind of get a sense that they seem to have a kind of a unique bond or chemistry where the protagonist in the present doesn't understand, but Neil seems to know who he is, even though essentially, as far as the protagonist's point of view, he doesn't know Neil at all. So the protagonist just assumes that Neil, which is played by Robert Pattinson from Twilight, right? And the new Batman. I don't know about that yet. But so essentially Neil knows these things about protagonists, like far as like he doesn't drink alcohol and what his favorite drink is at the bar and so like that. So the protagonist just believes that he must have read some dossier or something like that on him, and that's why Neil knows these things. Basically, he did his homework about him. No, he knows these things because it's already establishing like, hey, these guys know each other, and it doesn't matter who you are. You already kind of can see how the movie is going to play out. That Neil somehow is going to save his life, save the protagonist's life, at the same time giving up his own life. And essentially that Neil knew exactly what was going on the whole entire time. As the movie develops on, you kind of trying to figure out who was working for who and who is in charge of everything and who's kind of orchestrating all this. But as the movie goes on, it's easy to, you kind of pick up on like typical, it's still the same typical, I guess you want to say surprise, if you want to call it that, or kind of a shocking reveal that the protagonist set up everything in the future. So basically, the protagonist in the future self of the protagonist is orchestrating all this and organize the group Tenet, or the organization Tenet. And Neil is just kind of his best friend or protege or close pal, whatever you want to call it. And the future protagonist is orchestrating all this. So you have your kind of light and dark elements where the protagonist obviously is a protagonist, and he knows that he's a protagonist of the storyline. And there's even a little point during the movie where he's talking to another individual who kind of helps set up a lot of this stuff. So essentially, before I'm getting that, essentially the movie is about stopping the main bad guy, the main villain. I think his name is Soto. And so essentially about stopping him and thwarting his plans far as he wants to orchestrate the end of humanity in their timeline. And he does this with the aid of the people in the future. And the people in the future have the technology. They have devices, physical devices. If you put them together, it's able to erase all the timeline in the past. But it won't erase their timeline in the future because they just completely ignore the whole concept of the grandfather paradox. See, and that problem right there is insane to me, because if you're in the future and you have the technology to understand what's going on, and you understand the quantum mechanics and stuff like that, you understand thermodynamics, energy transference. You understand all these different things. Yet you feel like you need to go back into the past to end humanity in the past because it's going to save you in the future, and risk and just you're okay with risking the fact that it's really a 50-50 chance at the end of the day. And the people, and it has to be some type of propaganda message. So you later on find out towards the end of the movie that the people from the future are pissed off at the people in the past because the people in the past destroyed the planet and caused climate change. Because what is a movie without climate change being involved, right? What is a movie without them trying to tell us, oh, we're destroying the fucking earth? If I hear that shit one more fucking time, it's like, that's not even creative. It's not even creative. That's what, at this point, I have, all throughout the movie, my only question is, my main question is this movie intentionally written to be bad as far as plot holes and in the script? Or is it just, once again, lazy writing and saying, fuck it, just skip over this part. We're not gonna waste our time explaining this. Like, yeah, let's just give a random thing. Like, if you're worried about what got me is, how do you stop climate change in the future by destroying all humanity in the past? So if the past is going to affect the future, which was the future's present in the climate and the whole physical reality of the earth, how are the humans in the future not affected as well? Right? Does that make sense? If you go back far enough, or you go far enough into the future, essentially everybody will have the same ancestor. So if you're not worried about the grandfather paradox for humans, for the human species, for humanity, then how come that doesn't apply to the concept when you're talking about the climate and as far as the earth and other species on the earth? Like, I don't understand how that works. Like, you should come up with a better idea, because that's a plot hole that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You can't say that the past will be, if I go in the past and change something in the past, that it will make a different outcome in the future, but only for part of the future. So humanity gets wiped out in the past, but humanity still exists in the future. And since humanity's wiped out in the past, that means the climate in the future will be better because human beings are not there. Does that make sense? That doesn't make sense. If you're gonna have one change, then everything has to be changed, because essentially it will be a whole ripple effect. So that means that some of the humans, or if not all the humans in the future, will be gone as well. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe this shit just doesn't make sense to me, and I just made something up in my head. But nah, like, those are legit questions, man, and it doesn't explain it. And that's my problem with these type of movies. They don't actually explain anything, and you walk away feeling confused, and people are like, oh, it's really complicated. You just don't understand it. You gotta rewatch it. First of all, I shouldn't have to rewatch anything unless I want to for my enjoyment. If I had to rewatch a movie in order to understand it, it's not good. It wasn't written well. Now, if I rewatch a movie because I enjoyed the first time around, and when I rewatch it, I learn a little bit more, that's good. But incentivize me. Give me a reason to rewatch this fucking movie other than to help me understand it better. No, I don't need to rewatch it, because first and foremost, the movie needs to be entertaining. And you can have a thought-provoking entertainment form of media, whether it's a movie, a YouTube video, or a TV show, wherever the case may be. But you cannot sit here and make a movie like this and be confusing and be like, oh, it's complicated, you just don't understand it. You gotta rewatch it. And this is some of the comments I've seen in different parts of the different YouTube videos that I was watching. And be like, oh, you gotta rewatch it several times. I was just about to watch another YouTube video talking about the Tenet movie is ahead of its time. I don't know if it was trying to be funny, but I was reading the comments, people like, yeah, people hate on this movie so much, you just really gotta rewatch it, blah, blah. No, fuck no. And this is Christopher Nolan movie. It's from the same guy that made Inception, which was confusing as fuck because shit didn't make sense. Not, oh, I'm gonna go within a dream, within another dream, within another dream, within another dream. No, stop. Shit doesn't make sense. Shit doesn't make sense. And then in Interstellar, which also kind of floated with the whole interacting with yourself in the past outside of the space-time continuum. As you went into a black hole, essentially you kind of went into, I guess you want to say, the fourth dimension, the dimension of time. But not really. It's just like Interstellar, where it's like out here making up shit, like it's going along some of the theories in science that are floating around currently, but it kind of ignores it at the same time. Like it doesn't use it as a real guidance or reference. So to go back to the movie, as the protagonist moving along, he tries to steal a piece of art because he's trying to help out the woman, Kat, with her husband, Soto. He's trying to help her out, but at the same time, he's also using her to get close to Soto as well, which he eventually does after they go on a little sailing trip and stuff. And Kat tries to, I hope I'm saying her name right for as far as the character, whatever. As Kat, the wife, tries to kill Soto, the villain, on the sailing trip, the protagonist jumps in to save him and gains his trust and gets close to him because he needs him to help him do another heist to get the plutonium, because apparently it's Ocean's 11 and shit as well. So they go into another heist to steal plutonium, and then they kind of find out it's not plutonium that he's trying to steal. It's something even more worse than plutonium, because he thought, or because of what they told him, he thought the future was going to try to make a nuclear weapon. But at the same time, no one was really telling the protagonist too much, and Neil wasn't telling the protagonist too much, because the protagonist is the savior from the future who's orchestrating all this. So in order for himself to continue to make the right decision that doesn't affect fate, the protagonist doesn't really know too much of what's going on. Step by step of the way, he learns a little bit more and more. Which also makes you wonder who else is involved, who else knows that a protagonist is a savior from the future other than Neil, or does the scientist at the general know? And some fan theories that have floated out there is that the scientist was the scientist in the past that are in the present or whatever that talked to the protagonist and explained to him how the whole inverse thing worked. Basically was the same scientist that eventually created the algorithm, which they later on references as the device. So it says that this scientist created an algorithm that can invert a whole timeline or invert a whole universe and essentially erase the timeline or destroy everything. It destroys all humans, but doesn't destroy the planet Earth. Shit, as I talk about even now, I'm still like, wait a minute, what? And it's those things like that, because when you're trying to get details out of a movie like this, you don't actually get any details. It explains things, but it doesn't actually explain what the fuck needs to answer real questions. And even during the time when Neil brought up, our protagonist brought up to Neil about the whole grandfather paradox and stuff like that, Neil just also said, like, because he was talking as far as the humans in the future want to destroy the ones in the past when they just destroy themselves. Neil said, doesn't matter if the grandfather paradox is real or not. They believe it. They believe that it's not real, so that's all that matters. We just gotta stop them. It does matter. It does matter, because if the grandfather paradox doesn't work, then yeah, we need to make sure we stop them. But the grandfather paradox does work, then how about we just convince them that, hey, this actually is bad for you motherfuckers too in the future. I mean, you can save lives and other incidents, things happen and stuff. You maybe try to appeal to their logical side, or well, no, what about their emotional side? It just shows. It you would think that human beings that are so far advanced in the future and stuff and understand all these different things that they wouldn't necessarily go back in time to destroy themselves. If anything, they would go back in time to observe what's going on. And it makes me think of this one show too that I cannot think of the name right now. Oh, The Fringe. Fringe is like one of my all-time favorite sci-fi shows. And it actually incorporated having future humans, which ended up being the men in black who went back in time and just basically observed humans in the past and try to understand them, which is also another actual theory in science where we are being visited by advanced humans in a sense to understand their past relatives to help them understand themselves in the future. Or if anything, if we can go back and watch cavemen build fire and stuff like that and create a wheel, we would do it as well. That's essentially what it is. But it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't go kind of that route that The Fringe takes in like the 4th or 5th season. It doesn't even kind of get into that aspect. It just kind of talks over and like, it doesn't matter what is true or not. They believe it, so we gotta stop them. Okay, whatever. So like I said, they did the heist where they got the painting and stuff, and they ended up getting closer. And even during this time when they did the heist, Neil and the protagonist went in to take the painting. They encounter 2 individuals in black who came out of this machine or this closet at the time. You will see that they came out of it. What actually ended up being the inverse time machine or the inverse machine. And the people that came out of it, you kind of could tell too at that time, like, even though it's towards the middle of the movie, you kind of could tell that, okay, yeah, it's themselves. Especially when Neil fights off one and he just kind of lets the guy go and looks at him. You could tell that the only person that he would not kill is someone close to him that he knows. And obviously, it's got to be the protagonist from the future. Not messing up the timeline, not messing up the fate of what's going to happen anyways. So Neil just lets him take off. And even the protagonist ends up fighting himself from the future. Yeah, that did happen. But I said, things start to make sense when you're talking about quantum entanglement, when you're talking about the quantum world. And I say that also in reference to Avengers Endgame. So in Avengers Endgame, the quantum world, as far as Ant-Man, is infused into that, and that's what kind of helps explain having multiple realities, going to be able to go back in time and affect different things and stuff of that nature. And in Avengers Endgame, you see them use essentially a time machine, or basically a machine that shoots them into the quantum world, and they come out at different times where they also can interact with themselves, because all these quantum particles are happening at the same time and not happening at the same time. But that's how the quantum world works, at least far as they know, at least far as science says. Who fucking actually knows? So I even thought this movie was going to go there in that sense of the element. Nah, it didn't, because it still did not mention quantum. It just kept saying you're in an inverse timeline. But it did pick up on from the movie Arrival in a sense where it explains that time is not linear, it's spherical, meaning that time is always happening at the same time. Past, present, and future is always happening. And you can actually go and pick the past and future whenever. And you pop in and out of the timeline because it's spherical. It's cyclical, is always in a cycle happening. I can go with that. I can understand that concept. And I think most people can understand that concept as well as you kind of break it down and explain it. If you're going to do a movie like this, take the 15 minutes to explain it. Cut out some of the other shit. Some of the unnecessary dialogues. And you can explain this. There was some unnecessary dialogue between the protagonist and Kat. I get it was trying to set up some type of kind of a bond between those two. You can tell. Because he was drawn to her. And essentially it was fate. There's another story, kind of fan theory, that Neil is actually Kat's and the villain Soto's son in the movie, which his name was I think Maximilian or Maximil or something like that, and you kind of can get Neil backwards out of Maximil or something like that. I was like, whatever. That seems kind of a stretch. We really out here reaching for that theory, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was the case. And I'm okay with that kind of being in there. But if you're gonna have it in there, you really kind of make it more alluded to, like not necessarily some subtle things, but you need to have at least one kind of big thing to kind of get you to that concept that makes you think more about it. Because, like I said, if the movie is good enough, it's entertaining enough, I'm gonna go back and rewatch it anyways. So you have to build a movie like this upon layer upon layer. So that surface level layer should get the person interested and entertained enough to want to rewatch the movie, and then the other layers will be peeled away as you rewatch the movie over and over. But make the shit entertaining and have a general understanding. I don't need to understand every exact detail of the movie, and it's even okay if there are some plot holes, but let it be minor plot holes. You don't have to have big plot holes. You don't need a movie with big plot holes. Let it be minor. But in the first 15 minutes, the big plot hole, because they didn't take the time to explain how all this shit works. She just glossed over it, like, don't try to wrap your head around it. Like, no, like, what the fuck? No. Somebody take the time to explain this shit. Take the time to explain this, because a good thing to act in the first 15 minutes of the movie is when the protagonist is holding a gun and the bullet goes from the wall inverted back into the gun. Okay, who the fuck initially pulled the trigger? Oh man. And like as the protagonist picks up, or it looks like he's picking up a bullet, like using magic or something like that, picking up a bullet. He actually is dropping the bullet, but it's in reverse, and we just seen it in reverse, but it's not in reverse. From the bullet standpoint, the bullet is doing what it has already done. It just looks like not that way to us. Come on, man. That's not complicated, bro. That's poor writing. That's poor writing. Whether it's intentional or not, that's poor writing, man. That doesn't make sense. Because it's saying that the energy of the bullet and the ammunition or the radiation, that's what the protagonist was worried about. If all these different things get stuck to the wrong hand, that's why they're worried about a nuclear weapon, because they wouldn't be able to stop it. Although you have to think about it too, how would a nuclear weapon even occur? Because it wouldn't be an explosion, it would be an implosion, because it would be going in reverse, correct? I just now thought of that. That shit doesn't even make sense for him to even be worried about whether it happens they get nuclear weapons or develop some type of, they take materials, because they kept having different small objects. So that's another thing too, like objects were able to be inverted. But human beings cannot be inverted. Human beings have to go through a process, through the time machine, in order to go inverse. So think of it like a carousel, like or an escalator, not escalator. What is it called? Those revolving doors. I can't think of the name. It's not escalator. I can't think of the name, but you know what I'm talking about. They're like revolving doors. We go into a big building, and so on one side it's in the present, and then the protagonist, because Kat ends up getting shot by her husband because he takes her and realizes that she's a traitor towards him, betrayed him, and blah 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 blah. Who gives a shit? So the protagonist goes, because at this point in time, fuck the whole storyline. You're still trying to understand how the fuck any of this shit makes sense. That's what I'm talking about. You can't actually focus on the storyline because you're trying to understand the whole mechanics of this inversion process, of this inverse timeline. You're trying to understand that the whole movie. and that detracts and that takes away from the movie. So it's almost like the plot line is irrelevant because unless you don't understand what the fuck is going on as far as the inversion or the time inversion, you won't understand the rest of the movie. In fact, you don't even care to understand the rest of the movie because you don't understand what the fuck is going on with the whole time inversion. It's stupid. I don't care what no one says, man. Like, it's complicated. You don't understand. No, bro. I shouldn't walk away feeling completely confused because there's so many things that seem to contradict each other. And like I said, even the whole main plot of why the humans wanted to kill the people in the past was stupid. Because if they're that smart, then they would not want to fuck with the past that way. They would find a different way. I don't know. Hell, why even do that? If you understand time inversion and you're understanding how the thermodynamics and entropy or whatever, all this shit works, how about you find a way to clean up the climate yourself? Just stop everything. Just find a way to clean up the climate yourself. Or I don't know. I thought we was fucking gonna colonize Mars or something by then too. Like any fucking thing. Anything. Is better than the main plot that it came up with. So the part of the movie I was trying to talk about when Neil goes in, the protagonist goes in to save Kat because you gotta have a love interest in the movie, right? You gotta have a love interest in the movie, and then but his love interest or his interest in the woman want to protect her and save her and stuff like that. It goes on to show his moral character and he's such a good dude and all this other shit. So Kat gets captured by or taken hostage by her husband and goes into the inverted universe or the inverted timeline because it's still the same reality apparently. So it's not in a parallel universe. It's still the same reality or it's still the same timeline. It's still the same universe. So he goes into the universe, the inverse universe, and he shoots her, and he doesn't on the other side while the protagonist is watching, and so the protagonist says, "Fuck this, I'm going in to save her." So when you go into the inverse universe, the fuck? So when you go in the inverse universe through the time machine thing, the time carousel, whatever you want to call it, you go backwards in time from your perspective. But from the perspective of people, everyone in that timeline, in the same timeline, in the inverse universe, it looks like you're just moving backwards. So that's why you see in the movie, like cars look like they're moving backwards and stuff. So actually, when you see in the trailer that a car is moving backwards, that's actually the protagonist driving the car, from the protagonist of the future driving that car. Yeah. But it looked like it's appearing backwards, but for the protagonist, he's going in the inverse universe, so he's actually going forward to himself. Which is interesting because as you go into the inverse universe, you have to have oxygen. So you have to have a supply of oxygen to go to the inverse universe because I guess if you breathe, you don't breathe out oxygen, you breathe out carbon dioxide or whatever. So it's inverted. But it doesn't affect the rest of your body. Because if your breathing mechanism is inverse or inverted, then that means the rest of your bodily functions should be inverted as well, right? Because your bodily functions are not inverted, apparently. It's just your breathing. And essentially, as long as you go in there with your own supply of oxygen, which the oxygen that you have supplied is not inverted, but because it comes from our present timeline. So when you go through the machine, you still have all the same thing on you, the same. But if you try to breathe in the oxygen in the inverted timeline, you will be actually breathing out oxygen and inhaling carbon dioxide. Come on, man. You can't tell me that makes sense. You can't tell me that makes sense, man. And then that shit, say that shit is true. Say they're not making this shit up. Say they're taking shit from real life stories that we don't know about. That's even more fucked up. That means you're lying about thermodynamics. You're lying about something that you're not giving us a full understanding of what's going on. But that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Like I said, if they went along with quantum particles moving backwards, or what we perceive as backwards, that I can go along with that. I can go along with that. But you can't show me a movie where the guy you can go inverted. It doesn't affect your body whatsoever, anything, but you gotta bring your own oxygen. The rest of your body isn't affected, but you gotta bring your own oxygen because everything's inverse. So you breathe in carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen. Or, yeah, whatever, man. Even when the protagonist was driving backwards or driving a car and going in the inverse universe or in the inverse timeline, he flips the car and stuff. Then the car goes to explode. Because the villain Soto set the car on fire, seeing gasoline leaking, he threw out a lighter, and boom, the car explodes. Even though that's nothing happening in real life, it takes a while, and this shit just doesn't go up in flames. But whatever. So the car went up in flames on the outside, but on the inside, since everything is inverted inside the vehicle, the car goes in, it basically gets frozen. So obviously the inverse of hot is cold because it's talking about energy transference. But how does that make sense when it's only the protagonist that is inverted? So if only the protagonist that is inverted in this timeline, this universe, why would the whole car freeze up? Is it because the energy within inside him? Because instead of him getting hot outside, he'll get so cold inside? Okay, but shouldn't it just be his body? In the movie, it shows the actual vehicle inside the car being frozen. It shows ice on the fucking inside of the windows of the vehicle. How does that happen, man? How does that happen if only the protagonist is inverted? So it should all happen internally. He should have no external effect on the world or the perceived reality outside of his own body. That doesn't make sense. None of the shit fucking makes sense, man. None of it makes sense. And so Kat got shot there. And now I can't remember whether she got shot in the inverse. She got shot in the inverse universe, but then they brought her back through to, well, no, she got shot in the inverse universe, but it looked like she got shot. But actually, the bullet was coming out of her. So in order to save her, they had to keep her on that part of the inverse universe. And then she just went like into hiding for a little while because we didn't see no more of her. She healed up. But even then, while she was in the inverse universe, she was able to breathe. First she had oxygen, and then all of a sudden she was able to breathe. And then so was Neil. Neil, he was there for whatever fucking reason too. And then the protagonist was there as well. Eventually he was able to breathe as well, which I guess they inverted their bodies so they were able to breathe there in the inverse timeline. At that point, I stopped even pausing because I was pausing so much, rewinding. The movie was already like 2 hours long. I made it like 3 hours long because I kept pausing, rewinding, and stuff like that. Because shit just didn't add up. And then after a while, I was like, man, fuck it, whatever. Doesn't matter anymore. And back again to my point, like, if this shit is being too confusing, it's not complicated, it's confusing. I get complexity. But if you break it down and then I have a general understanding what's going on, okay, cool. I should have a general understanding. I should be able to understand the bigger detail. And this thing is all messed up. It's all messed up. The main plot is messed up. The details are messed up. You're left fucking confused throughout the whole movie. It's not complicated. It's confusing. It's bad. It's poorly written. I don't care. You can say, oh, you don't understand it. You got to watch it several times to get it, blah, blah. No, bro, this shit is not good. It's not a good movie. Now, as far as far as the script goes, let me put that into perspective. The script is all over the fucking place. And the mechanics of how the movie operates, as far as the timeline, all over the fucking place. But the acting is good. And the action scenes are good. So the acting is good. The action scene is good. It's clearly shot high definition 4K camera and stuff like that. It looks good. I mean, it's a Christopher Nolan big budget movie. I think it's a Warner Brothers. So a big budget movie. So it's not going. And Warner Brothers owned by AT&T. So you got money to make the shit look good. But at the same time, I guess Christopher Nolan's like, fuck the script. We're just going to do whatever. And then you can see, you can say Christopher Nolan is a genius because he did the Batman trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, which is, for anybody, you know, for the most part, those are the best Batman movies. Let's be real. Those are the best Batman movies, the Christopher Nolan movies. I'm all cool with that. But I watched Inception, I watched Interstellar, and now I watch this. And he just be out there doing some shit sometimes that don't add up, man. It just doesn't add up, man. So to get back to the movie, which is still confusing, they're in the inverted timeline, and Kat is there. She's all healed up and stuff, and she's gonna get close to her husband, the villain, Soto. God, I hope his name is Soto. You know, I should just looked it up, right? It's that simple. I should just look it up, and so that way I know exactly the names of the movie, the names of the characters in the movie. And it wasn't Soto. What is his name then? So the protagonist is John David Washington. Robert Pattinson is Neil. Elizabeth Debicki is Catherine, or Kat. And Priya, she was an arms traffic dealer who the protagonist used to help set up basically the kind of an arms trade trying to get into. He was trying to find a plutonium towards the beginning of the movie. So that was her whole connection to her, even though she kind of knew about the Tenet organization and what was going on as well. And I think she was actually working for him in the future, but he didn't know it, or she didn't know it, or whatever the case may be. Man. Oh, my fault. It was Sator. Yeah, his name was Sator, not Soto. So apologize for that. His name was Sator. Andre Sator. That was his name in the movie. So as Kat was sitting there confronting Sator and playing alongside with him and stuff, basically the movie comes to a climax where the protagonist and Neil, and they have these two teams. You know, you have the blue team and the red team, and the blue and red team was always kind of referenced throughout the movie, as far as who was going back and forth between the regular timeline, which we know as far as when the movie starts, and then the inverse timeline. So the inverse timeline was color coordinated as blue, as far as the Tenet organization goes, and then the regular timeline, as what we know as, was coordinated by the color red. And you kind of get the sense of what was going on too in the movie. And then when you start to see more of the colors towards the end and stuff, when they did a big operation, because they went to Sator's original home where he was digging up the plutonium and stuff like that. That is where he was going to basically arrange the bomb, or my fault, the device. Because it wasn't about a nuclear weapon. It was about the device that the scientists created in the future, which allowed her to alter or wipe out a timeline in the past. I still can't understand that. You're wiping out a humanity timeline in the past, but you don't wipe out a planet. How does that make sense? What about correspondence? That's so above, as above, so below. How about everything's connected to each other? How can you just wipe out humanity but leave the Earth? I don't know if I missed something there or what, but wherever the case is, it's fuck it. Fuck this shit. Like, this is how I felt during the movie. Like, towards the end, I started getting aggravated. I was like, man, fuck it. Who cares? Who cares anymore? Who cares what this shit actually says or if it makes sense anymore? Just fuck it. Fuck this whole movie. why'd I sit here and watch this? Because my friend was like, you gotta watch it. She didn't say it like it doesn't make sense. So I had to watch it myself because it's interesting to me. I was like, all right, well, and I also didn't pay for it. Because I wasn't going to pay for this shit. I definitely wasn't going to pay for it after she told me that. But she's like, go ahead, I already paid for it, so you go ahead and watch it. Just let me know what you think. Like, what do you think of the movie? Like, the thing exactly when she was telling me, I'm like, I think exactly what you already thinking too. This shit sounds like it doesn't fucking make sense, and it sounds like it's taking different elements from, like I said, quantum theory, quantum mechanics, things from the movie Arrival, as far as spherical time instead of a linear time, and Avengers Endgame when using quantum mechanics, going to using device going to the quantum world to change out the different things in a timeline in different realities. But even that kind of is a stretch of a connection as well. So we're at the end of the movie. The protagonist and Neil go in, and the protagonist goes in to stop someone, to stop the algorithm, because now the algorithm is broken up into these different pieces of devices. I don't know if it's 9 or 3, because I thought I heard him say 9, but then it ended up being 3 or whatever. But and also that the algorithm was somehow physically encoded into these metal objects. They didn't really necessarily explain how that happened. And even when you say algorithm, man, that kind of gets thrown around a lot and stuff too. But like algorithm is like not essentially. You usually use it more in the terms of mathematics and our I want to say technology, in a sense, when you're talking about IT, as far as computer coding. So Merriam-Webster dictionary, I always like to use them for every reason. It has a definition of an algorithm, noun, a procedure for solving a mathematical problem, as finding the greatest common divisor in a finite number of steps that frequently involves repetition of an operation. Right? So I don't know how to use that word. Even in Investopedia, an algorithm is a set of instructions for solving a problem or accomplishing a task. So once again, when you talk about computer coding, it's just a whole bunch of set of lines of computer code that solves a certain task. You see it in search engines. So when you talk about algorithms, you're talking about YouTube, what goes on your timeline, it's basically based on a mathematical equation, or based on a set of coded principles saying, hey, if you click on this or if you watch this, then most likely means you will like this based on this. But somehow they took that and manifested it into physical objects. Whatever, we're gonna go with it. So they eventually, the protagonist is saved by Neil at the end. Neil in blue, but then the Neil in red is the one that he talks to at the end of the movie. I believe so. I don't even remember. Like I said, after that point, I was like, whatever, fuck this shit. It doesn't matter anymore. I get what they're trying to do. It's trying to show that fate is intertwined, and the timeline, the past and present and future, or the past and future are always intertwined. And while one is going in one direction, the other one's going in the other direction. As you go into the future, you're going in one direction, and the future comes from the past, which is coming from another direction, or flowing into another direction. So the inverse universe is flowing into a different direction than the present, past universe timeline, even though it's in the same timeline. Now that might be a little complicated to understand, but you get it. Like, you might not fully understand the details, but you can grasp the concept. A movie can be complicated, but if I can grasp the concept, I'm good. And then to finish off the movie, that's so Kat, she dove off the boat, and that's when you realize that the woman that we seen earlier in the movie, that Kat seen diving off the boat, was actually herself in the future. So now that they're good, we understand that, which you kind of probably already saw too at the same time. So the future self basically goes back and through the time inversion machine to get back in her original timeline. And now she's back in her own timeline or in her own part of the universe where she usually was originally from. I believe so. She just kind of hid out until time caught up with itself. I'm still confused on that nature of how that happened. And man, now I remember why I turned off my screensaver on my computer, because of course it popped up while I am recording. That was annoying. So it makes sense that, in a manner, I guess, how Kat was still alive in the future, which is now the present, and I'm still lost on that because I don't know they actually, because they don't show it. You just kind of supposed to fill it in, and I don't like shit like that in a movie. If they don't show something and you're left guessing, or you're like, oh well, logical conclusion says this and that. Well, I don't need this. I'm watching a movie. Tell me a story with a concise message so I understand the general concepts of the movie and make it entertaining. Don't just be all over the fucking place, leaving out plot holes, and it's like, okay, well, I just assumed they got there and got there. And the movie finishes off with the protagonist going to kill Priya, the arms traffic dealer that he was associated with early in the movie, because she was going to go kill Kat, because Kat had seen too much about the whole Tenet organization and the time inversion and saw her as a liability. And the protagonist caught up to her, and then he went and killed her. And then Kat and her, and they used some type of time, basically like not manipulation, but Kat, the protagonist gave the phone to Kat and told him, if you ever need me, say this thing and I'll be there. And she said it, and he knew the message already, and he knew where she's going to be at, and he saved her life from Priya, the arms dealer who's going to kill her. And then Kat and her son, Max, who's supposed to, through fan theory, is supposed to be Neil, they go off and whatever. And then, so protagonist is always watching over and stuff. And then I believe it just ends. If I'm not mistaken, it just ends. By that time, I was like, man, fuck this whole movie. Fuck this whole movie. And I'm sure there's more plot holes that I can't even think of. I watched it at one time. I didn't rewatch it because I stopped and paused it so much and rewind it while I was watching and stuff. I was like, I'm done. This whole movie is annoying. This whole movie is annoying. I don't care what anyone says, man. It's confusing, and it's either on purpose and not through complexity, but just leaving out shit on purpose, or just lazy writing. And it doesn't take the time to clarify and clearly explain things. There's even another part of the movie where Neil kind of tries to explain it, talking about I don't know, he's talking about thermodynamics, or he was just talking about physics in general. And then that was kind of it. And then it was like, whatever, kind of saved me from that. Just, I don't want to feel like hearing that right now. I think it was the protagonist character that said that. Like, no, man. It has to got me again, because I'm like, here's the second time you're going to try to explain it, and then you just stop it. Like, we're not going to. Essentially, what they're saying is, even in the movie, we're not going to waste our time explaining any of this. But in order to understand the movie, you have to have a general concept of what is going on as far as the time inversion. Why does it work on objects? And it only works on human beings if you go through a certain thing. So you can do it with certain objects without sending it through the machine, because the way the future was communicating with Sator in the past was by burying things, and he would pick it up at a certain location and stuff, and he'll knew what it was. Yet for humans to go invert, they had to go through the machine. So I was just like, come on, man. And then in the future, I guess they already have a different machine or device they're using. So they can send stuff in the past, but you can't really communicate with the future because we don't have the technology in the past, which is the present in the movie, to understand how to send things back and forth in time in the future. So you have to use the time inversion. This shit is wild, man. This shit is wild. Well, like I said, my whole point of the movie was just kind of the whole point of this episode, this podcast, was kind of just give you a soft overview of the movie, but really to just talk about how shit doesn't make sense in movies, and people try to say, "Oh, it's complicated." No, bro, it just doesn't make sense. The Matrix is a movie where you kind of get a general understanding of what the movie is about. You know, it's about Neo. You know that his name was Anderson, whatever. You understand that he is looking for what the Matrix is, and throughout the movie, they slowly hell, fucking Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne's character sits down and tells you exactly what the Matrix is. He takes the time to explain that shit. Understand how we got there, how he got to that point, and that the planet Earth has been this for since the dawn of the 21st century, and he even showed you what it looked like. And say that we're in the Matrix. You've seen the kind of the human farm and stuff where humans are created, not born anymore, and you understood what the fuck is going on. Now, when you get to the Matrix Revolutions and the other movie and stuff, the third movie of the film, then yeah, I'll give you that shit. Some of that shit didn't make sense, and I love the Matrix trilogy, one of my favorite sci-fi movies as well. But that shit doesn't make sense when it's towards the end. It's talking about how Neo can have a connection with the machines and all that stuff. That's kind of out there as well. They kind of don't really explain it. But once again, you still get the whole general concept of that there's a simulated universe that people don't know about and they're awake. And it works as an allegory or a metaphor in reality. So it's cool with that. The same as this movie. It doesn't have to be confusing just because it's presenting itself as complex or complicated. It doesn't mean it has to be confusing. I still should be able to understand the general concept and idea of the movie. You don't understand what the fuck is going on generally in this movie because you don't understand if it's a machine doing it or if it's an algorithm doing it because of what the device the lady made, or did she make the machine too? Or was the machine made in the past? I still forget how that even goes down. But somehow, don't worry about it. It's an inverted timeline, but it's still the same timeline. And then it doesn't even go on to explain like, okay, is there a ripple effect? Does this affect anything else happening in that reality on both sides of the timeline, whether it's the future or the past or whatever? And the present just kind of seems to get ignored. Because they can reference everything in the future and the past, but really there is no past. It's all in the present. The only time it gets in the past is when you go into inverted, when you do inversion and you're seeing the past. Because you're from the future. But you're not. Man, whatever, man. If you watch that movie, fuck it. I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you watch it, well, I guess if you like myself, you watch it out of curiosity. Once again, I didn't pay for it. Now, if it was like a $6.99 rental, I probably would. I wouldn't mind doing that. But no, not $20. And that's why I was hesitant on watching it anyways. Because I was like, something about this doesn't add up. I don't like something that just doesn't add up. Even from the trailers, I'm like, something about this doesn't add up, man. I get it, Tenet, 10 spelled backwards and forward. I understand it. Cool. Just still, man, something that doesn't add up. And I don't know if you can find one. You obviously can find a propaganda message as far as the climate change and shit like that. I'm sure there's some type of occulted hidden messages. Is kind of alluding to the whole time travel and quantum entanglement, quantum mechanics without saying it. So I get that too. But it's just all over the place, man. It's all over the place. It's all over the place. You can have these complicated movies and these thought-provoking movies, but at least follow the real actual science in the movie. And if you're going to make some shit up, at least allude to the fact that, hey, we're making this shit up in the movie. Because that's essentially, you can even argue that that's what they're saying. Every time they try to go to explain the time inversion, they vaguely explain it and then basically say, don't worry about it. So, okay, cool. You let me know, don't worry about it. Let me make this shit up. But then it leads to you making up other shit in the movie and not explaining details. And that's why you have these plot holes. And plot holes are the most annoying thing in a movie like this. Because that's where the confusion comes from. I'm confused because you didn't take the time to explain certain aspects of the movie. And don't look at the audience like, oh, you guys don't understand it. No, you didn't fucking make a good movie to help me understand this shit. That's it, man. That's it. It kills me. Movies like this kill me. They try to hide behind complexity and, oh, it's so intrinsic the way the storyline is and you can see the cause and effect, blah, blah, blah. No, 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 no. Fuck no. You have plot holes in it and you're making up shit as you go and stuff. And then you just say, oh, no, it's complicated. And I don't know if Christopher Nolan himself said it was complicated, but reading some of the comments and as far as fans interacting with the movie and having their opinion on the movie and even some of the reviews of the movie, people are like, oh yeah, it's complicated. No, no, no. It's plot holes. It's plot holes. It's plot holes. Plain and simple. Plot holes. Shit doesn't make sense. Shit doesn't add up. So if you want to take the time to go watch it, obviously that's your prerogative. I say wait until the shit comes on a streaming platforms, whether it's Netflix, Hulu. It's Warner Brothers, right? As I said, I think it's Warner Brothers, so it should be on HBO Max. I believe it's Warner Brothers. I just had the Wikipedia page up too. Yeah, it's Warner Brothers, so it should be on. It should be on HBO Max now. I guess not. Eventually, it'll be on HBO Max. So if you have HBO Max, you can watch that. I used to have HBO Max, and then I got rid of it because I got tired of watching HBO shows. It was only like 2 shows I watched anyways. So, man, when it comes to movies like these, like you just take it for what it is. Just take it for what it is, and yeah, I'll give the argument that the movie might be better. Or I can probably understand some different things if I go back and watch it. But I mean, that goes with anything. You're not going to catch everything the first time around as you watch a movie or hell, if you listen to a podcast, you won't necessarily catch everything that goes on the first time around because you're trying to understand what's going on. But at the same time, you don't want to focus too much on a certain aspect, a certain detail of movie or a certain media entertainment form where you lose sight of the whole main concept of what's going on. Like I don't want to get too focused on the details in the movie or focus on the plot hole because I'll lose sight of the whole concept of the movie and I'll miss the main plot in general. But shit, movie like this is man. I'm not enticed to see this shit again. I'm not enticed to see this shit again at all. Like I said, I took my time watching it. I broke it down. I paused. I rewind. I fucking did some research while I'm watching a movie. And for most cases, that's how I really watch movies anyways. Especially when I'm at home, I sit there and take my time to watch it. Sometimes it takes me like a day or two to watch it. But, it was a rental, so it was only had like 48 hours. And I'm probably sure I was on the tail end of closer to that 48 hours. So I went ahead and watched it. And I still took my time and rewind and stuff. But man, it's just these movies like this. No, they're not entertaining. They're not entertaining. There's some action scenes, but it's not really that much action in it to warrant let me, this is really great. I will rewatch this. Like nothing about the movie makes me want to rewatch it. Even like I said, I was left confused by things. Going back to the movie doesn't even fucking help. Watching YouTube videos kind of helps. Some of these reviews kind of helps. But I'm like, nah, man, y'all still glossing over it too. Like, nah, fuck that. Fuck that. And you gotta be careful who you watch on these YouTube reviews as far as gaming, media, movies, stuff like that, because they want to get the early access to review these movies, to review these games. They want to give favorable reviews so they can get the early access, so they can kind of get the perks of the business, basically, in a sense. Nobody wants to give early access to a game or a movie when a company that's not gonna want to do it when you're gonna give them a bad review. I give you early access to this movie to review it, and then bam. Or even if they don't get early access, maybe something else goes along with it. Even positive reviews. And some people just want to get positive reviews, so more likes, more attention. Whatever the case may be, they're trying to go after a target audience. I don't know. But this shit is not it. This movie is not it. This movie is not it. The acting is good. I mean, for the most part, it's decent. It's good. John David Washington is good. Robert Pattinson played it well as well. Played the movie part well. The action scenes, the ones that are there, they're decent. They're good. Uh, I'm not gonna give like the movie a rating. Fuck ratings. Like it's an okay movie. Rarely are you gonna see a really horrible movie. It's just when it comes to these big budget movies, there's always so much hype and advertising around them. You don't want to be disappointed. And often lately, you'll go out from these big budgeted movies and be like, "What the fuck did I just watch? Why did I just watch this shit?" I'm taking a risk watching Wonder Woman. I'm gonna watch it at some point in time. Uh, trying to kind of coordinate and watch with my friends, but I might just say fuck them and go watch it by myself. That seems to be what I do sometimes anyway, so it's nothing new. Or I might rewatch it with them. They want to watch it. I don't know. I'm thinking about watching it today. Right now, I'm thinking my goal is towards watching it today, and then whenever I do watch, I do want to do a review on it because I've seen some bad reviews already about it, and it's one of those things like fuck, I still want to watch it for myself. But man, we're gonna find out. So once I'm done watching this, I'll definitely do an episode on it as well. When I do that kind of overview review of Wonder Woman 1984, it would be more into the whole comic book genre of these movies and stuff or whatnot. Not necessarily worry so much about the sci-fi-ness to it of the case, whether I'm worried about theoretical physics applying to the movie. So yeah, obviously it's a fucking comic book. It's all about imagination for the most part. Depending on which character it is. Obviously, Wonder Woman is a fucking magical Amazonian woman and all this other shit. So we're not really gonna worry about fucking actual science in this movie. But so definitely look out for that. I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow or Thursday, but definitely be on the lookout for that. Once again, check my YouTube channel, Damian Jackson. I have videos up there. I usually if I'm not making a podcast episode, I'm definitely making a video that day. And I try to do 2 videos when I do make a video. And I've been uploading kind of frequently, so find me on there. Go ahead and make sure you subscribe. You're not going to find my YouTube channel at all. I try to. You're not going to find it. Even I changed to just my regular fucking name just because I wanted to go by that. I don't like nicknames anyway. So just as my regular name, it kind of didn't necessarily pop up. You gotta kind of do update instead of relevance when you're trying to sort out, doing a sorting out or doing a filter of the searches. And you gotta do up to date or the latest ones, whatever, in YouTube. And I think you scroll down, you'll eventually find my name. And I say that based on analytics that I see on my YouTube channel, and it shows that most of the views that I get, they're from my Twitter account, my Parler account, and even from my Minds account. My Minds is Damian_Jackson, and my Parler is Damian Jackson 22. Yeah, and then my Twitter is Damian_Jackson 2. I always forget. I say this shit all the time, and yeah, I still fucking forget. But definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you can watch the videos. You know, obviously you're not gonna like everything that I put out there, and I don't expect you to, but yeah, it helps you find my shit easier because the shit I talk about, every video I put up on YouTube, there's always a disclaimer from YouTube. If I mention COVID, it puts it up there. And they check the audio and shit, that they check the contents of the video uploading. I mentioned a certain type of thing they want me to talk about, yeah, it's not gonna show up in their little algorithm search engine. So that's always duly noted. Follow the podcast, whether you're on Spotify, Apple, or Podbean, wherever the case may be, blah, 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 all that shit. Follow me, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. So until next time.